In today's video, I'm going to be sharing 7 things you ought to know when it comes to caring for this beast of a plant over here. This is my Philodendron Golden Goddess. I've had it for quite some time. It's getting quite large, and like I said, in this video, I'm going to be sharing 7 things that you ought to know when it comes to caring for your Philodendron Golden Goddess. All right, guys, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of a view how ginormous my Philodendron Golden Goddess really truly is. This thing is growing like crazy, and I think I've figured out exactly what it needs, what it wants, and how best to care for this house plant. I'll be sure to get some really great gimbal shots in so you can see just how well it's doing. But I'm really excited to share everything you need to know when it comes for caring for this beautiful plant. These are really easy care for Philodendron, and if you don't yet have a Philodendron Golden Goddess, I highly recommend them. So let's jump into this video. Thanks for checking out this video. I'm Tyler. If you like what you're seeing or you find this video to be useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, or better yet, you can hit that subscribe button. Now, to really show me some love, click on the bell for alerts and notifications for future content. Oh yeah, don't forget to check out my merch store, tylermossop.com. So the first thing you ought to know when it comes to caring for this beauty shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. Now, what I recommend is staking up your Golden Goddess. This is what is going to allow it really to grow, vine, and just climb like crazy. I've used I believe this is like a 6 or 8 foot cedar stake, and I love to use the Velcro tape to attach all of my plants, for the most part, to their stake or moss pole. And in this case, it's worked really, really great. And it just keeps on growing. It's kind of extending beyond that 8 foot or 6 foot stake at this point, but staking it up is really what's going to allow you to get those really nice, mature, large-sized leaves. I'm not sure if you can see, but some of these leaves are almost about a foot long, and by staking it up, you're going to allow the plant to get more mature and get those larger leaves. So the first thing you ought to know is definitely stake your Philodendron Golden Goddess. The second thing you ought to know is what exactly you should be including in your soil mix for your Philodendron Golden Goddess. Now, I'm not actually going to be repotting this house plant today, but if I were and I had access to all of these ingredients, I would definitely be including all of them in this mix. So let me break it down for you. I would use about 3 parts of a pine bark mix. This happens to be an orchid bark mix that I picked up from my local nursery. 3 parts of that to about 1 part of peat moss, 1 part perlite. Now, if you can get your hands on any sort of horticultural charcoal, I highly recommend that you add it to the mix. I'm using, again, 1 part of that. And if you have a container that doesn't have drainage, I wouldn't recommend it, but if that is the case, using horticultural charcoal at the base of that container can really help absorb any excess moisture or water, which is a great tip. And also, I'm using about 1 part of this gritty sort of small stone mix. Now, it's really good for your aeroids to use a really well-draining gritty mix. Your Philodendron Golden Goddess is going to absolutely love this and flourish with this type of soil composition. So I definitely recommend it. This is definitely something you ought to know. So I did just allude to this, but the third thing that you ought to know when it comes to caring for this particular houseplant, most houseplants in this particular case, is once you have it staked up, you have that great soil mix, is to go ahead and make sure you're using a container that has good drainage, a couple of drainage holes at the base. Even better if there is like a saucer at the base of that container, so you don't have to worry about ruining your floors or whatever the case may be. But really, this is kind of the ideal sort of setup. If you can get these 3 things right, then you are ready to move along to watering, light, fertilization, humidity, and a couple of other things. And we're gonna jump into those things you ought to know right now. So like I just explained, once you have your setup kind of down to a T with your container, your soil mix, and the stake, you really are able to kind of really zoom in, I should say, or focus on crucial care and the conditions. Now, covering, watering, light and the lighting, humidity and fertilizer. Will cover the next 4 things that you ought to know when it comes to caring for your Philodendron Golden Goddess. So let's start off by watering this beautiful house plant. Now, the easiest kind of way I can explain to you to get the watering right is by using the finger test. If you kind of just place your fingers at the top of the soil and just kind of move them around and push them in just about an inch or 2. If that sort of soil is dry, then that is a really good indication that it's time to give your Philodendron Golden Goddess a good water. Now, if you dig a little bit deeper, it should still be moist. You don't ever really want to let your Philodendron dry out to the point where the entire soil mix is dry. So using the finger test is the best way. As always, watering your houseplants is really a function of the amount of light that they're receiving. So if you have this positioned, getting the right amount of light, which we'll jump into in just a second, you want to think about that. And maybe a good way to describe this is, for me, I live in the Northeast, in the Boston area. That's where my houseplants reside, and in the winter, it's a little bit less sunny than it is in the summer. So just being conscientious of this, and that would mean that in the spring and summer months, you're probably gonna be watering this a little bit more frequently, and during the sort of fall and winter, you can kind of cut back on watering, but throughout the whole entire year, keep using that finger test to just really gauge whether or not you are watering enough, if you're watering your houseplant enough. So let's jump into lighting, giving your Philodendron, specifically the Golden Goddess, really good bright indirect light, or even some dapple direct light. So that's hits of direct light with some shade there, is kind of the ideal setup when it comes to lighting. What I like to do is, if I can give it some direct morning light, that's kind of the best sort of direct light you can give it to your plant. If it's getting too much direct sunlight in the afternoon sun can be extraordinarily harsh, and that can actually do more harm than good to your plant. Now, what does that even mean, bright and direct light? That means, in my case, I have these kind of exposed to south-facing windows, but they are set back or set in about 4, 6, 7, 8 feet from the window. So at that point, it's no longer considered direct light, but actually bright indirect light, because the light's traveling through the window and it's just not as harsh. So that's what I recommend when it comes to lighting. It's a good idea always to kind of move your plants around. You can turn them, twirl them around so that they're getting more even distribution of the light. Or again, if you live somewhere like I do, where in the winter months, it's a little bit of a different situation when it comes to lighting, don't hesitate. I actually recommend moving your plants around so that they just are exposed to different types of light. And this might actually give you a little bit of a better idea of where you should be positioning some of your plants, kind of experiment with that a little bit. So that covers water and light. Your Philodendron and your Philodendron pink, or not pink princess, this is my Golden Goddess, is really no exception to this, but giving them a really good amount of humidity never hurts. I like to use a hygrometer, which is a little digital readout. You can pick them up at your local nursery or on Amazon for not a lot of money, and it will tell you what the humidity levels are next to your plant, depending on where you position it, or even in your plant space. I've got a couple kind of around this room that I'm in now, and if you can keep the humidity level throughout the course of the year in that 60 percentage range of humidity, then your plants will do very, very well. I try my best to keep the humidity up, and it's definitely a lot more difficult in the winter months. of course, where I'm located. If you're located a little bit more south, you'll probably have an easier time of keeping a consistent level of humidity throughout the course of the year. And that is really ideal for these plants, just where they're native to and that kind of thing. Trying to recreate those natural conditions is how you really get them to thrive and flourish, and humidity is really a great thing to do. I get a lot of comments and questions about, why is my plant not doing so well? And 9 times out of 10, it's either related to humidity or the soil composition. A lot of times, even if you're going to a great nursery, they don't necessarily pot up the plants in the correct soil mix. So just keeping your eye out for that is really important. And last but not least is, definitely not least, is fertilizing your philodendron. They absolutely need to be fertilized. This can be done throughout the course of the spring and the summer. So those growing months, you're going to want to use a well-balanced, so for example, a 20-20-20 fertilizer. I suggest using a liquid fertilizer. You can dilute it back 50%, and I would do that probably, at least every other week throughout the course of the spring and the summer. And what that's going to do is give your plant the nutrients it needs to grow and get to that level of maturity that you can start to see here, where you're getting these huge, beautiful, gorgeous leaves. And this is exactly why plants are taking over my house, and it's getting to be quite the jungle in here. I don't know what I'm gonna do about it. But guys, this is everything you ought to know when it comes to caring for these plants. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions. If you have this beautiful plant, definitely leave a comment down below. Well, that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely leave a comment down below. Give this video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. Miss you guys already. Until the next one.